Good evening. My name is Chisholm Potier. I'm a director with the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. And welcome to our candidates forum for Thunder Bay Superior North and Thunder Bay Rainy River. So we'll do Superior North at 6, and we're going to do Rainy River at 7. So we want to thank Net News Ledger for live streaming the event tonight. And I have a special request from Net News Ledger that if you have cell phones, please put them on vibrate so it doesn't interfere with the feed and the broadcast. So thanks also for the support from the Valhalla Inn and Maverick Entertainment Group. So the issues discussed here tonight affect business in our community, and it is important that you have an opportunity to hear the views of the candidates and their parties in order to make an informed decision on Election Day, October 19th. If you're using social media to share tonight's debate, please use the hashtag #ChamberDebate. The order of speaking has been determined by draw. It'll go from my immediate right to my far right. Questions will rotate from my right to my far right with each question, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to questions, and there's a timer back there that will guide them on that, after which a debate between all candidates will be held for 2 minutes. And then candidates will be notified when there are 10 seconds remaining in their initial response, and the microphone will be shut off when time runs out. We're not going to be totally hard and fast with that, but we would ask you to kind of respect the parameters of the time since we're trying to get 2 debates in here. So a reminder that all candidates have agreed to be respectful of each other, to not engage in name calling, and to not interrupt each other when speaking. My role as moderator is to ensure that everyone has a chance to make their points. And our first debate, of course, as I mentioned, is with the candidates for the Thunder Bay Superior North riding. I'll just introduce them. There's, from my immediate right, Richard Harvey, Conservative Party, Patty Hadju, Liberal Party, Andrew Folds, New Democratic Party, and Bruce Heyer, Green Party. So the random draw has determined that Richard will speak first, and he'll have 1 minute to do an opening statement. And that'll be followed by the opening statements from the 3 other candidates, and then we'll get to questions and debate. Go ahead, Richard.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out tonight. Most of you already know me. You know me as Mayor of Nipigon. 9 years ago, in the first 3 months of my term as mayor, we lost our entire industrial tax base. It was truly trial by fire. Difficult times. So what did we do? We entered into unprecedented infrastructure renewal. At the same time, we avoided running deficits. We carried no external debt. We actually ran surpluses. And all of this we did while lowering taxes. Similarly, the Conservative Party of Canada balanced its budget in 2014, 2015 with a small surplus. And all of this while undertaking unprecedented infrastructure renewal and lowering taxes. Budgets don't balance themselves. I know that, you know that. So I want to be your voice in Ottawa. It's about the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. With 2 seconds to spare, nicely done. And our next speaker is Patty Hadju for the Liberal Party.
I'm Patty Hadju.
Oops.
You may know me as the Executive Director of Shelter House, an award-winning, multi-million-dollar, unionized, nonprofit organization recognized under my leadership for its excellence by this very Chamber of Commerce. This election is about change, but what kind of change do we need? Tonight you will hear guys with long track records of unsuccessful policy-making promises things that they can't deliver. The Liberal Party is the only party offering realistic, pragmatic, and immediate relief for the severe economic distress and infrastructure deficit that we in the North have felt for decades. Our 3-point plan focuses on investment. Investment in infrastructure and jobs, investment in middle-class families, and investment in communities. We must always remember that economic growth is not just about prosperity. It's about building a country that gives everyone a real and fair chance to succeed. It's time for honest and transparent leadership. It's time for the politics of collaboration.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for the mispronunciation, Ms. Hadju. Andrew from the New Democratic Party.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today. First, I would like to acknowledge our presence today on the traditional territory of the Fort William First Nation. For the last 9 years, I have served as a city councillor. I chair the Earth Care Advisory Committee. I'm a member of DSAB, the Waterfront BIA, and the Lakehead Conservation Authority. You know my record. I stand up for what I and my constituents believe. Job creation, tax fairness, First Nations, childcare, pensions, veterans, healthcare, foreign policy are all top of mind issues for voters in this election. But what underlines all of these issues is trust in our government. For the first time in our history, we are facing serious challenge to the very nature of our democracy and a threat to our personal rights and freedoms that define us as a nation. Bill C-51, voter suppression, muzzling of scientists, gutting of the census. The NDP has stood alone, fully in defense of free and open democracy and personal freedoms. I look forward to our further discussion tonight. Thank you.
Speaker is Bruce Heyer from the Green Party.
Thank you. For the last 7 years, I've been your Member of Parliament for Thunder Bay Superior North. I'm one of the hardest working MPs in the House of Commons, including the Maclean's poll by my MP peers called me one of the top 3 MPs in terms of representing constituents. I've introduced more legislation to the House of Commons than all of the previous MPs from Thunder Bay Superior North combined. 4 of the more notable ones of those are C-311, the climate change bill, the only climate change bill ever to pass the House of Commons, the Cell Phone Freedom Act, the Made in Canada Act, which would require 50% content and would help Bombardier. And this last June, you may have noticed, I passed Bill C-61 through the House of Commons, unanimously creating the National Marine Conservation Area. So in addition to being a small business person, I've done a lot of other careers. I have wildlife experience, and I'm looking forward to this debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So our first question, and we'll go in the same order, and everybody will have a minute to respond, but I'll direct the first question to Richard Harvey from the Conservative Party, and you'll have 1 minute. Under the Canadian system, the wishes of local constituents can sometimes take a back seat to the positions and policies of the political party and its leader. So what is your approach to finding the balance between these two masters in the role as Member of Parliament?
Thank you very much for that question. One of the things that I think is really important to recognize, and that is that we are elected to represent the people of Thunder Bay Superior North. And certain people will tell you that all of the parties have all the votes are whipped. The reality is that the Conservative Party actually has in its policy, its policy states that members of Parliament are free to represent their constituents and their conscience. The number one commitment I make is to represent the constituents and conscience. Obviously, we're with a party. The reason I'm with the Conservative Party is I truly do believe that the Conservative Party of Canada best represents the hardworking people of Thunder Bay Superior North. The Conservative Party of Canada is the party that we best fit with. Thank you.
And Patty Haidu from the Liberal Party has a minute to respond.
I think that the role of a Member of Parliament is 2 things. One is to represent the constituents in Ottawa, but also to represent all of you in good decision making. When you vote in an MP, how does that MP decide what is right for that community? And I think it's a blend of things. I think it's obviously doing consultations with the community in a very broad way, not phoning 9 people from the phone book. I think that it is actually bringing information to the riding about why good decisions need to be made and what the evidence says about the decision. And then I think it's about bringing all that information forward and making a decision in caucus and advocating for the position of the North in caucus. The Liberal Party also does not whip votes. So there is this misleading statement by our Member of Parliament, our former Member of Parliament, soon to be, that in fact all other parties have whipped votes. This is in fact incorrect, and I think it's an unfair and unjust statement.
Andrew Folds of the New Democrats.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I think I'd like to start off by saying, you know, my last 9 years in City Council, I think I've never been afraid to speak up. I've never been afraid to say what my constituents want. I've never been afraid to fight for what they believe in. And I think at the end of the day, that's what all of you want, is someone who will fight for the North in Ottawa. For far too long, we haven't had strong representation, and it's time for change. When you vote for someone, you're really voting for two things. You're voting for that person, and you're voting for their core values, their beliefs, their work ethic, their personality. But the second part is you need to have the confidence that you know what they're going to follow through on, and that's their policy. So in essence, you're voting for two things. You're voting for the core values of that person. I think I've demonstrated those core values in my performance in City Council, and you're voting for a policy. When you vote for me, you put your trust in me. That's a sacred trust, and I would never take it for granted. I would always vote with my heart and my mind, and I would never vote for anything that damages the constituency.
Thank you. Bruce Heyer, the Green Party, 1 minute.
Parties are not mentioned in the Canadian Constitution. From 1867 till 1970, all that was on the ballot was your name and your profession. In 1970, Pierre Trudeau amended the Elections Act and put party names on the ballot. In the fine print, it said you can't run for a party nationally unless the national leader signs your nomination papers. A few months later, he called his own backbenchers mere trained seals. Yes, most votes are whipped by the three main parties. Sorry about that, Patty. Actually, the Liberals do it less, somewhat less. The Harper guys are next, the Conservatives, and actually, since I left, virtually no votes have been free votes with the NDP, virtually none. They voted, Gloria Galloway of the Globe and Mail has documented this very well. So I joined the Green Party for many reasons. One is it's the only party that doesn't whip votes. I will always put constituents ahead of any party.
Okay, so here's where it might get tricky. We have 2 minutes of open debate. And Andrew, yes, you can start.
I guess what I want to start with is every political party, not every single vote is whipped. And I think everybody needs to understand that. But I think the core issue here is you need to know what you're voting for. You need to know what the values that you're voting for. You need to have trust in what you're voting for. If you don't know really what you're voting for, then you can't have any trust in the system. And that's where the platforms are front and center. You know what all of our platforms are. You need to know what you're voting for.
Okay,
and that is
so now it is time to let somebody jump in there, Andrew. Thanks. Patty, go ahead.
So I'd like to take that on, actually, with you, Andrew. I mean, what are your core values? You certainly don't have a core commitment to any role that you've accepted in the recent past. The NDP policy has flip-flopped, clearly, depending on where in the country Thomas Mulcair is speaking. Just recently, we've heard him talk about childcare. His previous record on childcare as a Liberal MPP talked about how appalling it was to mandate childcare. So what is the value of your party? What are your core values? They're nowhere to be seen on your party website. In fact, when I chose the Liberal Party, I chose it specifically for the core values of the Liberal Party that include things like transparency and compassion and evidence-based policy decision-making. So I would challenge that statement. And
certainly not minimum wage, certainly not childcare.
Bruce or Richard, did you want to get your fair shot in? Bruce, go ahead.
Tonight's supposed to be a meeting primarily, I think, about business and in Canada. And I think it's really important to get on the record what our own Kevin Page recently said. He said the Green Party had the absolute best platform and the best budget, and it was balanced, by the way. And he said that the NDP platform was so full of holes that it reminded him of Swiss cheese.
Richard.
Well, actually, it was on CBC radio this morning that he's not endorsing any of the platforms, but I don't want to get into that. Reality is, you know me, we are a party that actually in our policy statement. So yes, people can try and enforce votes. The Speaker of the House ruled, as far as even asking questions this year, that in the Conservative Party, that if someone wants to ask a question, it's their turn to ask the question, they can ask because it's in our policy statement. And so despite what my friend from the other end of the table will say, Go take a look. Look it
That's-
up and see what you've
I
got.
was there, Richard. What the speaker actually said is that any member of any party can try to catch his eye and try to be recognized by the speaker. End of story. I
Okay,
was
so
there.
we'll agree to disagree, and plenty of other opportunities to debate as we go on. So we'll move on to the next question, which will first go to Patty Haidu. So the Ontario government has committed $1 billion towards the development of infrastructure in the Ring of Fire. While the federal government has signaled support for the projects in the area, there have so far been few specifics on the commitment of federal funds and involvement of federal ministries in the development of the area. What will your party do to ensure the Ring of Fire development reaches its full potential? 1 minute.
Well, thank you very much. Excellent question. This is where I think the Liberal Party really shines. This is one of the key capstones of our platform, and that is our immediate commitment to infrastructure spending. And I can't tell you how exciting that is for the North. We've had a federal government dance around the Ring of Fire for a decade with no action. Once in a while, some vague commitments. Richard Harvey talks about the infrastructure spending in Nipigon. In fact, they're booming because of provincial dollars, twinning the highway, building the bridge, no federal support.
So you're kind of out of time. If you want to just wrap up quickly.
The clock is wrong.
It's supposed to be 1 minute. It was
So
set at 2 minutes.
$125 billion investment over 10 years, $10 billion investment per year for the first 2 years. I will fight to make sure we get our share.
Okay, and so we'll hopefully reset the clock to 1 minute now. And Andrew Folds, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Clearly, Ring of Fire is really one of those items that sets Northern Ontario apart. The Ring of Fire is sort of a $50 to $120 billion opportunity. Not only is it an opportunity for Northwestern Ontario, but frankly, it's an opportunity for the entire nation. What is, in fact, very unfortunate is we have had no national leadership. And it is, in essence, we've seen investors walk away. And frankly, the provincial government made a bunch of announcements in the last provincial election, and they seem more interested in selling off hydro than actually getting something done with the Ring of Fire. Right now, we have the opportunity to create good-paying jobs for generations. We need to do so in full consultation with First Nations. We need to do so in full consultation with communities, and we need to make sure that those jobs stay in Northwestern Ontario. We need to make sure that the value-added jobs in Northwestern Ontario, we need to maximize the benefit in consultation with all of our partners to make sure that we do it right.
Thank you. Bruce Heyer.
I agree with everything that Andrew just said, and I'd like to add this. The reason that the Ring of Fire has not proceeded, the reason that the federal government has not jumped in is because we not only have failure of leadership in the federal government, but even more so, we have failure of leadership in the provincial government. I don't very often agree with Greg Rickford, but Greg Rickford accurately said that they should not commit their share of the funds and move ahead until there's a real plan on how the province decides to spend its $1 billion. We don't have a plan for infrastructure. We've done this wrongly for a long time. Also, going back 23 years, it was Bob Rae and the NDP who canceled the deal with Manitoba to bring inexpensive hydro to Northwestern Ontario. And as you know, the cost of hydroelectric power up here, while we pay for nuclear power and incompetence by Hydro One, it has been a real obstacle to us moving forward in a variety of ways.
Thank you. Richard.
$1 billion. Was it a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, just over $8 billion was transferred from the federal government to the province for infrastructure. In that, $1 billion was earmarked and was intended. It was everyone's understanding was going to be that $1 billion. It went elsewhere. Southern Ontario Transportation, I'm not sure exactly where it went. It disappeared. I was at the Rotary today. They asked me, how do you make sure then that it's going to happen, that it's going to be used for what you put in there for? There needs to be a plan in place. We have the same thing with federal transfers, with health care. We have the same thing in all different areas. We transfer the money. The province does what they want with it. The provincial Liberals decided that there were other priorities they had, and then they're asking for another $1 billion. As Greg Rickford said, give us a plan before we come up with another $1 billion for you.
Okay. Thank you. And now 2 minutes of open debate. If somebody wants to, I'm going to let Patty start this time, Andrew. Go ahead, Patty.
Well, you know, interesting that Richard's talking about the plan. I mean, the plan the Conservatives have is to invest in ridings that they hold. That is the plan. If you have a Conservative MP, you get the money. And you know, we haven't had a Conservative MP here for as long back as I can find. And so we have not seen our share of the pie. And that's unfair, that's unequitable. You know, again, Andrew Folds wants to talk about selling off hydro. I think he still thinks he's running for provincial government. But the tension that Ontario has faced is really about infrastructure. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a great idea to sell hydro, but here's what I know as running an organization. If you don't have enough revenue to meet your needs, you either get to increase your revenue or cut your expenses. And what you have to do to cut expenses, in my case and in the case of Ontario, is look for places to actually either sell things or stop programs.
Bruce,
and
do you wanna
Ontario's
get
made a
in
decision
at this point?
to invest that money in infrastructure because of the federal deficit.
Let's talk about this myth about you have to be the party in power to get money into the riding. I'm sure you all remember when Ken Boshkoff, when he was a Conservative, said the airplanes will fly over unless you vote for him. My staff tell me that 5 out of the last 7 years, more federal money has come into Thunder Bay Superior North than came into any other Northern Ontario riding. If the Conservatives think they have a nice safe seat somewhere, they know that they don't have to invest money there. If they have a hard-working, hard-hitting, well-spoken, outspoken MP who stands up for the riding, the money does get here.
Okay, I'm going to have to get Richard to jump
Folks,
in and
the
then
reality
Andrew.
is that infrastructure spending is important. Yes, there has been a lot of infrastructure spending in our riding by the Conservative government. But let's not kid ourselves. Unprecedented amount. I actually have here, if people want to see it, that talks about the fact that if you look at from 1993 till 2005, what the Liberals put in compared to what's just come in, not even including the $53 billion invested in the Build Canada Fund, unprecedented, massive amounts of infrastructure spending. And that's because we recognize that it's being useful. At the same time, that has been done while eliminating the deficit and lowering taxes.
Okay, so we're running out of time, so I have to get Andrew in.
I'd like to start by saying I absolutely will not apologize for wanting to serve the public and doing so in any role. I want to be very clear about that I do not apologize to serve the public. But I want to be very clear that City Council, as a City Councillor, we're not allowed to run deficits. We have to spend within our means, which means we have to prioritize. And as a councillor, I realize the investment in infrastructure is profound, because when you do that, you give the private sector confidence. When you give the private sector confidence, they invest. And so instead of, you know, maxing out credit cards and taking out massive deficits, we are reprioritizing and making sure that the right investments go into the right priorities to make sure they benefit Northwestern Ontario.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the third question, which is going to Andrew. What measures would your party adopt to encourage businesses, especially small companies, to invest in new technologies?
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to make three quick points. One, I was just in Marathon and talking to small business owners there, and it really resonated with me, their plight in terms of how difficult making ends meet was. And so, in essence, what we need to do is we need to make sure that those small businesses have the infrastructure they need. We will invest 1 extra cent of the gas tax into municipalities so they can have a robust infrastructure. We also recognize that small businesses, it's very risky. And people take on a lot of personal risk, and they make a lot of personal investment. We want to make it a little easier for them. We want to reduce their taxes from 11 to 9. But the thing that is actually the most exciting is we want to encourage small and medium-sized business in innovation and research and development. So we want to provide incentives so that they can reinvest in their businesses to make them more profitable and more sustainable.
Thank you. Bruce, same question, 1 minute.
The Green Party of Canada, by the way, please go to Vision Green, Google Vision Green, the policy statement, or Green Party platform and budget. We would roll out we have written a National Sustainable Jobs Plan. We would make critical investments in trades, apprenticeships, and education to make sure that our Canadians are ready to work. We also would dedicate 1%, or rather 1% of the 5% GST to infrastructure. We would expand the home renovation program. You remember Eco Energy? We would return it and even expand it to create lots of jobs, unleash an army of carpenters and electricians across Canada. We would reduce small business taxes immediately to 9% and more later. And to be honest, we would increase the taxes on large businesses, which are currently 1/2 the US rate.
Thank you. Richard.
Small business is the backbone of the Canadian economy, and I think we all recognize this, and it's absolutely important to have successful small businesses. We've made that commitment. I just know from being mayor of a community, and we're running $20 million budget there. We're looking at it, but one of the things we recognize by lowering taxes, allowing more money to be in the pockets of the business people, getting the commercial taxes down, people invest. Businesses move on. We'll be lowering the taxes. The other thing that's very interesting is not just what we're going to do, because we're looking at over the next 4 years reducing the payroll deductions. So we're looking at a 20% reduction. Looking at the other parties, and this is not what I'm saying, this is the Independent Federation of Canadian Businesses, they have pegged the cost of the Liberals' plan. For the average Canadian worker, it's going to cost $1,000 a year more that they will have taken off their paycheck. And the employer, the boss, another $1,000 bucks. NDP, $1,500 and $1,500 that will be coming off. That's not for me.
Thank you. And Patty.
Well, we'll get into the debate later because those numbers just seem to be pulled out of thin air. But I mean, we have a very similar plan. We want to keep the committed small business tax rate reduction to 9%. We want to invest $500 million in the federal provincial labor market agreements that will help small and medium-sized business owners have access to a well-trained labor force. We definitely want to invest in jobs and skill training, make sure that we actually expand training programs, and make sure that we actually include Aboriginal communities in that expansion. These kinds of things will help small and medium business grow. We have two parts of the problem. Part of the problem is the cost of small business, but part of also the problem is actually acquiring appropriate labor. And I can tell you as an employer, that's a challenge. It is difficult to find well-trained people who have had access to education and access to supports to enter the workforce. So these are the commitments that will actually be a robust plan that will take into consideration all elements of the struggles that small and medium-sized businesses are facing.
Thank you. Okay, so let Bruce kick off this round of the 2-minute debate.
I think it's very clear to most of the people in this room that Mr. Harper has made large business a priority. He slashed the tax rate to half that of the U.S. with no strings attached, no job creation, no investment. It's moving into offshore tax-free accounts in Panama and the Bermudas. It's not the way to go. Did you know the IMF, not a left-wing organization, has tabulated the indirect and direct subsidies to the oil companies at $34 billion a year?
So we're running behind schedule, so we'll have to keep it going tight, Andrew. Sorry.
There's two quick points that I want to make in terms of supporting small business as well. In our party's platform, we want to support universities and colleges in terms of research and development and the commercialization of products. And I'm very hopeful and optimistic that the spin-offs of that will affect local business. But the other thing I think we're missing here is we have a Canadian content piece in Ontario. I wish it was higher. But it's made sure that Bombardier is very sustainable for the next number of years. The spin-offs for small business, because of that investment in public transit, it is huge. We've got 1,000 jobs at Bombardier, and the spin-offs for all the smaller companies is huge.
So Patty.
Well, I'm really glad that Andrew brought up Bombardier because their corporate tax hike will actually effectively end big business in Northern Ontario, and that's a huge risk. Talk to anybody along the region, talk to anybody in some of the smaller communities, and oftentimes they're a one-industry town. And when you raise corporate taxes in small towns like this, what you do is actually shut down those businesses and they take their business elsewhere. It's an unfortunate fact, but it happens all the time. We can't afford that in the north, and it's a huge flaw in the NDP plan.
So I know that some of the people in this room were actually last Thursday at the workshop that was put on looking at some of the issues with the small businesses. The Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. I'm just going by what they say. They went through all of their different factors, and on every single one, they said the Conservative Party of Canada is the party of small business. That's from them. not me.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is directed to Bruce. For the 2-minute debate portion, just as a rule of thumb, trying to give everybody about 30 seconds. So. Okay, employment insurance is supposed to be an insurance program to support workers when they lose their job. Of course, it's paid for by workers and employers. The government, however, has traditionally collected more than it needs to fund the program, which makes it a tax, not an insurance premium. Successive governments have committed to reforming the system, but nobody has actually ever come through with that. So will your party commit to reforming the EI system to make it work the way it is supposed to as an insurance program funded on a revenue-neutral basis that will lower premiums for both workers and employers?
Both the Liberals and the Conservatives have made the EI premiums into a tax. A strong statement, but Paul Martin and the Liberal government basically stole $56 billion from the Workers' Insurance Fund and used it to balance the budget and look like heroes. Big problem. It went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said it was illegal. In a bizarre finding, they said it was illegal, but the government didn't have to pay it back to the EI fund. If there ever was a job-killing tax, it is the EI premiums that are way above what's being paid out. I and my staff have to deal weekly, monthly, annually, struggling to get people their benefits that they have trouble getting because this present government has quite clearly ordered their people in the field to, whenever possible, not pay out the benefits that they need, they deserve, and they've paid for.
Thank you. Richard.
That's why, recognizing that, I thought it was 30 million, but Bruce, if it's, as you say, I thought it was 30 million that the Liberals used in their slush fund. But whatever it was, that's not right. That's not the way it should be. We should not, especially on the backs of small business people, and you and I, be funding personal slush funds. And that's why we're starting immediately with beginning to roll back on those payroll deductions, because it is supposed to be revenue neutral. That's where we're moving on it. And we're going to keep on going that direction. So I guess, are we willing to look at, your question was, are we willing to look at reforming it or working on it? We're already doing that. We recognize that that has to take place. But let's make no bones. Well, we're looking at reducing the deductions that will come off of your paycheck and will come out of the employer's pocket, the business's pocket. The NDP and the Liberals are looking at payroll tax hikes. That's an issue.
Okay, thank you. Patty.
I really love how the Conservative Party just makes up whatever they want. I mean, they wave little fact sheets around and they make it up. In fact, our plan is to reduce EI premiums from $263 to $231 and follow through on the reduction of small business tax rate, which I've talked about. We also want to lower the waiting time for people to actually access EI, so end the higher 910-hour eligibility penalty, which the Conservatives placed. We'll also repeal the 2012 Harper changes to employment insurance. And we'll work with the provinces and territories to assess how successful the EI system is really in terms of delivering its core mandate to provide income security to workers in a changing labor market. Really, I think we can all call on the ghost of whatever prime minister that we want. What I really am interested in is looking forward. We can look forward now, or we can rehash the history of the last 20 years. My interest is in actually making good policy that's going to take us forward, and I think we have the best platform to do that.
Thank you. Andrew.
Well, the best predictor of the future is actually the past. And, you know, Mr. Heyer was quite right. I mean, the Liberal Party of Canada stole our money, stole $56 billion of our money, what small businesses paid and what employees paid to balance their budget. Not only did they take that money, they made it more difficult for people to make claims for their benefits. So not only did they take the money away, there were fewer and fewer people eligible, which drove people to the fringes, which drove people to poverty. So when there are these claims about, you know, looking forward, well, we've got a lot of people that are fighting on the fringes, fighting against poverty. We're committed to freezing EI premiums for the next 4 years. We certainly want to decrease the wait times because it's the right thing to do. We know that an efficient EI system gets people back to work quickly, and ultimately, that's what we want to do.
Thank you. So we now have 2 minutes. of debate, and Richard hasn't started the debate yet, so I'll let him start.
Well, I appreciate the fact that people want to throw around different numbers. I'm not throwing around my own numbers. I'm not throwing around numbers that came from the Conservative Party of Canada when I'm saying these numbers. These are the numbers that came, and some of you in this room were at the meeting when they were looking at, and the Federation of Independent Businesses was saying, this is what it will cost. I have a choice, and we have a choice. Do we trust the independent businesses, the small businesses, and the people that are actually looking at what it's really going to mean to them?
Okay, we'll have
or
to
do
let
we-
somebody else jump in.
Or do we listen to the other parties?
Bruce?
We have two parties of big business in this country. We have one party of no business in this country. And
I agree with that.
I want to see a good number of NDP seats in the House of Commons that have an important perspective on many issues, social programs and others. I would never in a million years want to see them actually run Canada, and I don't think you do either.
Andrew, you probably want to get in?
Well, I'm a proud New Democrat, and I make no apologies for that. I think the EI program is one of those programs that is sort of one of those social foundations of our country. We are a compassionate people. We are an empathetic people. We know that sometimes some people have hard luck. And I think it is truly Canadian when we help each other out. I don't think it's particularly helpful when we take money away, make it more
And
difficult to
just
make claim benefits, and drive people towards the fringes.
Okay, so Patty, you want to get in, I'm sure.
So here we have the mythology of hard luck coming up from the NDP. It's not luck, okay? It's infrastructure, it's housing, it's investments in communities that make better opportunities for family. It's not luck. And, you know, I'm so tired of hearing the NDP claim the social justice mantle. In fact, when you're running an austerity budget and you're backloading your promises for 20 years and upwards, you're running a dishonest campaign. And that's what you're hearing from the NDP, this mantle of social justice wrapping themselves in the flag of the poor. Well, I'll tell you, I work with the poor, and it's never luck. It's always the social determinants of health, which include housing and education.
Okay, thank you. So, next question. Back to Richard. Our chamber members are huge fans of balanced budgets, but also see the need for big investment in infrastructure, skills, and competitive tax regimes. How do you prioritize tax versus spending? And how important is a balanced budget to your party?
Absolutely balanced budget. We've made that commitment. Now is the time to move forward with balanced budgets, but also with lower taxes. Those two can go together very well. When we stimulate the economy, when you get small businesses, give them the opportunity to be successful. When we're doing that, guess what? Money comes in. The surplus we have this year in Canada that we've now seen, that's not because we cut programs. That's not because of any of that. It's because more money came in because we see economic growth taking place. And so I do not accept the premise that you can actually, that you have to separate the two between keeping your taxes down and having infrastructure spending. We've had, as I said, the facts are facts. Unprecedented infrastructure spending while lowering taxes. It can be done.
Okay, thank you. Patty, same question.
Well, the federal government surplus has been built on the backs of the veterans, the Indigenous people, the unhoused, the hungry, the students. So let's not talk about a surplus here. That's a shell game. Really, what I'm talking about right now, what the Liberal Party is talking about right now, is a historic investment in infrastructure. We have an infrastructure deficit. In Thunder Bay alone, we have 900 unhoused people. If we spend money right now, we will cut our social costs, we will boost our economy through providing stable and skilled employment, and we will also stimulate all of those small and medium-sized businesses. Where do you think their customers come from? They come from employed people. They come from people that are thriving in their various careers. So in fact, what we need right now is we need an investment in infrastructure. We are proposing running a small deficit, no different than investing in something like your mortgage or your education. I have run a deficit for years to educate myself and to educate my children. It's a planned deficit to improve our earning potential, and that's what this is.
Thank you. Andrew.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And I think what we need to focus in on is what we're spending the money on. My party is committed to a balanced budget, and I take some exception to the comments made that it's an austerity budget. We are investing in childcare. We're investing in pharmacare. We're investing in infrastructure. We're making those critical critical investments that make differences in people's lives. One of the issues that I'm hearing over and over again is people are struggling with their day-to-day lives. And so a government needs to make priorities within their fiscal responsibility to make the investments that improve people's lives. We have a concrete plan. We're not making this up as we go. We're not flip-flopping. Deficits, no deficits. The budgets balance themselves. We're not talking like that. We've got a clear, concrete plan that will make a difference in people's lives, everyday lives.
Okay, thank you. Bruce.
I agree with Patty in that all of us do wise debt when we buy a house, when we invest in certain things. It's our annual operating expenses that do need to be balanced. To reiterate, Kevin Page said that we had the best budget. It's a balanced budget, and he even believed it. And he really, he gave it a big endorsement. Where would we spend the operating funds that we are going to spend? A plus and minus. We're going to reduce over 5 years the debt to GDP ratio from 31% currently to 26% in 5 years. We're going to do away with tax loopholes now that are costing us $3 billion to the very richest 1% of our society. We are going to increase the large corporate tax rate to where it was in 2009. That's not too wild, to 19%. We will spend on infrastructure $6.4 billion. The list goes on, including retraining forestry workers for $1/10 of a billion a year, and we'll reduce tuition to students. And once again, go to the website and look at these things. They've been published for weeks, for months.
Okay, thank you. So 2 minutes of debate now. And Patty's going to jump in first.
All right, well, the NDP concrete plan has been based on faulty numbers. They projected double the economic growth projection that based on the conservative numbers. They're projecting an extra $10 a barrel of oil. So all of the extra money that they think they have, including Thomas Mulcair's glee at the supposed surplus, has gone into their balanced budget. So in fact, their numbers are flawed. And as my colleague has pointed out, economists have pointed out that their plan is as wholly as Swiss cheese. It's poorly costed, it's poorly planned.
Bruce next.
Just one, I agree with what Patty just said, except Mr. Mulcair is basing his predictions on $67 a barrel oil, where many economists now believe that it's more likely to go to $20 a barrel oil. So wildly optimistic predictions by the NDP. I'm really concerned that about whether it's poor design or active deception, Mr. Mulcair is just wrong on this.
Andrew, I'm sure you want to get in.
I'm sure I do. Well, I mean, I've just read a number of editorials in a number of major newspapers that suggest that the NDP plan is prudent, and you know, if you take a look at the history of provincial governments in this country, we have the best history of running balanced budgets, and so our history speaks for itself. Our performance speaks for itself, and you just need to look at the evidence. I again will speak to the values of our platform. Pharmacare. I'll speak to the values of childcare.
And we're also running out of time on this. So Richard, finish off.
A couple of things here. One is the comments about Kevin Page, because I listened to the news this morning. Sorry, that's not what was on the news this morning. Another thing that I want to look at is that, yes, there are times for running small deficits, possibly. The reality is, though, is that if you are going to be running a deficit, as was stated, you have to have a plan to get out. The balanced budget law in Canada states that that's exactly what you have to do. You have to have a plan to get out. Justin Trudeau said if he's elected, he will scrap the balanced budget law. In other words, he doesn't plan on ever getting out of deficit.
So we're going to have squeeze in one final question directed to Patty to start. Retirement savings are a significant concern for employers and employees alike. Employers are worried about the extra payroll costs of mandated programs such as the Ontario Retirement Pension Plan. or an expanded Canada pension plan. So what is your party's plan to address concerns around retirement savings?
Well, we at the Liberal Party do believe that we can make the Canada Pension Plan more generous at a lower cost, and we can make it easier to save for retirement. We're going to take a direct action and work with the provinces and territories to provide Canadians with a more secure retirement. We'll restore the eligibility age from 67 back to 65. And I can say from personal experience working at Shelter House, that is essential to low-income seniors. We'll immediately increase the guaranteed income supplement for single lower-income seniors by 10%, again, alleviating poverty for many seniors that are living on the edge. And in fact, we'll work with the provinces and territories and the retiree organizations to enhance the Canada Pension Plan. One of the great things about Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party is that we believe in collaboration. And many of you may have heard when he was asked by Peter Mansbridge what the first thing he would do would be, and that would be to sit down with the provinces. We don't believe in unilateral decision-making at the federal level. We believe in collaborative decision-making with provinces, and that's a big difference.
Thank you. Andrew.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Certainly, from my perspective, as I knock on doors and meet people over the last few months, the issues around seniors are significant. And certainly one of the things that I'm hearing is a lot of fear out there. Seniors are living in fear of what's coming next. And it's largely around their own income and how insecure it may be or how little it is. And so the NDP and I believe that we should be increasing CPP and improving the quality of life of our seniors. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. The NDP also believes we should be reducing the eligibility age from 67 to 65. We also think that we should keep income splitting for seniors. Those things will make a difference in the pocketbooks for seniors. But there are other things that can also improve the lives of seniors, that can improve their retirement security. And I mentioned earlier pharmacare. Tom Mulcair announced a universal accessible pharmacare program last week. And this will make a difference in seniors. 1 in 10 people don't fulfill their prescriptions because they can't afford it. Our plan will lift 200,000 seniors out of poverty. I'm very proud of our plan.
Thank you. Bruce.
I'd like to answer a broader question, and that is, how do we implement a national senior strategy and make sure that all seniors have the safety and security that they deserve and need and have worked for their whole lives? So we do many of the same things. We would keep income splitting for pensioners, for sure. We would also double the CPP benefits because it only costs 1% per year to administer CPP, unlike many private plans where all the benefits are eaten up by high percentage rates. But in addition, we will have a guaranteed livable income. And another way to put money in people's pockets are carbon fee and dividend. No time to explain it tonight, but please Google carbon fee and dividend. We would also do pharmacare, and a really big one is predictable home care support to help keep seniors in their homes. It'll save money to society, and it will allow those people to maintain their quality of life longer. Thank you.
Richard.
We've certainly recognized the concerns that are out there. My parents are 80 years old, just over 80. They're living in their home. Things such as the pension splitting is the reason they can stay in the home. Making sure that we get more money into the pockets of seniors is absolutely important. And with that in mind, we've expanded additional funding because we've also recognized that pension splitting is great, but there's also seniors who are single. There's seniors who are widowed, and we want to make sure that they're getting more money. We've expanded services for seniors. Those are the things that I think are absolutely important because seniors built this country for us, and we need to move on. We need to give them that support. We need to be there for them. And part of the way of doing that is making sure the tax-free savings accounts, so many seniors have told me about how blessed they are to have those tax-free savings accounts, how much assistance they've been to them, and providing additional funding.
Okay, thank you. All right, one final 2-minute open round, and then we'll go to the closing statements. And somebody's going to stick up their hand. Patty's going to go. All right.
I'd like to also clarify that the Liberal Party, despite the fear-mongering that we've heard from the Conservatives and the NDP, would not cancel income splitting for seniors. It is part of the Liberal plan to keep that stable. I laugh at the TFSA. I mean, realistically, someone who's living on GIS and OA, a CPP and OAS and, making, I don't know, under $1,000 in a best case scenario, doesn't have any money left over to put in any savings account, never mind a TFSA. So you're definitely not talking to the seniors I'm talking to. From my perspective, I think...
Okay, I'm going to throw to Richard now there, Richard.
Again, it comes down to, as I go door to door, seniors of all different levels appreciate the tax-free savings account. I appreciate the opportunity, whether it's a small amount you can put in or a large amount. People are appreciating that. And we need to keep on moving ahead with that. But also, even more importantly, we brought in the income splitting. I'm so thrilled to hear now that the Liberals and the NDP are going to support it when they didn't initially. So this is a wonderful thing to hear. We also are bringing in, as I said, additional support and help for the widows, because we heard that message when we brought in the income splitting. People
Andrew,
say, great,
did you want to get
we
in
need
at
more.
some point on that?
I would like to actually take a little bit of a different tack. Your question was about retirement security, and one group that we haven't talked about in terms of retirement security is our veterans. We've asked our veterans to do enormous things and see and participate in very difficult tasks, and it's shameful the kinds of cuts that we've made to our veterans in terms of benefits. And there are issues with mental health. There are certainly issues with the support center here being closed. And I mean, we have to give them the support that they need, that they deserve, because they've done heavy lifting for all of us. So we cannot forget about them.
Bruce?
I'll save you some time to some, I don't want to add anything right now.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Thank you, Bruce, because that actually, for the first time, got us in at 2 minutes. So we'll do the closing statements, a minute each, in the reverse order of how we started. So we'll start with Bruce and move towards me. Bruce, go ahead.
You have 4 parties to choose from in this election. The Conservatives haven't won in this riding since 1931. That's 84 years ago, so you don't have to worry about vote splitting. Richard Harvey is one of the bravest people in Thunder Bay to run for the Conservatives here. It is going to be either a Liberal or an NDP minority government. That's what it's going to be. It's very clear. And so how do you go about deciding who to hire or perhaps rehire, in my case? I'd like you to think about which of the people standing up before you you'd like representing you. Someone who will represent your interests and put your interests ahead of any party. Someone who's been a strong voice and will continue to be, who will best represent your interests in that minority government, who's capable of cooperation and compromise. And that's probably enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew.
Thank you very much. First, may I just thank the Chamber for hosting tonight's event. I want to thank all the candidates for being up here, and I want to most importantly thank all of you. I mean, standing room only is quite something. So, as I've said, I have 9 years' experience on City Council, and I've learned a great deal, primarily from listening to my constituents. I want to deliver for them and for the future of my and all of our families in Thunder Bay and Superior North. Thunder Bay Superior North, I believe, is on the cusp of greatness, economically, environmentally, and socially. But it requires national leadership and someone who can deliver. The choice is clear, and people want change. Tonight, I'm asking for your trust. I ask for your vote. A vote for Andrew Folds, for Tom Mulcair, and the NDP to build the kind of Canada we can all believe in.
Thank you. Patty.
Thank you for attending tonight and for being such a responsive audience. It's a pleasure. It's clear that Canadians have become tired of a Conservative government filled with deception and shell games and empty promises. And the NDP is following the Conservative model of deception. Their flawed costing shows that Thomas Mulcair has already broken major promises, delayed help for the working class Canadians, and embraced Harper's cuts. Economist Jack Mintz notes that Mulcair's job-killing corporate tax hike will lead to a loss of nearly 150,000 Canadian jobs immediately, and many will be in our region. In this election, Canadians have a clear choice between the Liberal Party's plan for smart investments that will create jobs and growth, or the cuts promised by Mulcair and Harper that will slow down our economy even more. I look forward to working hard with you on the challenges and opportunities that we see here in Thunder Bay Superior North. On October 19th, help me become the voice that we need in Ottawa to get real action in our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard.
The best person to spend your money is you. I firmly believe that. My friends here, they're making a lot of promises, and we always are hearing that. The Conservatives have eliminated the deficit. The Liberals want to create more debt for our children and grandchildren. The Conservatives have lowered taxes for families and businesses. The NDP will raise taxes to pay for their reckless promises. As I said, the best person to spend your money is you. I want to put money into your pockets because I know if I put money in your pockets, you'll spend that money locally. That stimulates the economy. I want to make sure we have a secure country for my children and my grandchildren. We need a Conservative representative in Thunder Bay Superior North in Ottawa. Thank you.
So thank you very much. This concludes the Thunder Bay Superior North debate. We live in a wonderful part of a wonderful country with a wonderful democratic process, and I want to thank you all for coming here tonight, participating in the process and participating in this debate. Thank you very much. We're going to take a 5-minute break and set up for the next one.